Hey everyone, Erin from the Impatient Gardener. Today I want to talk to you about chopping off your plants. Actually, we're talking about the Chelsea chop, which is a great term for something I did for a lot of years before I had ever heard the term. And it's just about cutting back some of your perennials by 1/3 to 1/2 at roughly this time of year, when they've really put on a fair amount of growth, but they're not getting to the point where they're blooming, or it's not a ton of growth yet, and we're not really at like the heat of summer. So this works well with a lot of different perennials, and I'm going to show you a few of them that I do it to. But it's called the Chelsea chop because this is a term that derives from the Chelsea flower show in England. And in England, they generally say do the Chelsea chop because the timing of the Chelsea flower show, which is usually about the 3rd week in May, is about the right time in England to be doing that. Of course, the weather obviously makes a big difference in this. And this year, the Chelsea flower show is actually in September, not May. None of which matters. It's just a great term for this process of cutting back your perennials by a little bit. So there's a few reasons to do it. So when you do this, you're essentially pinching back your perennials. So that will lead to more branching and more flowers. It also creates a more compact plant. So for instance, especially in plants like this sedum, this is, I believe, Autumn Joy, plants that are prone to flopping a little bit, it can keep them more compact and prevent that opening up at the center where they just split open by the end of summer and then they kind of look like garbage. And it also delays blooming. So what you can actually do is you can sort of time your blooming a little bit better. And in many cases, if you've got a big stand of the same plant, you might want to cut some back and not cut others back so that you've got a longer period of bloom for that specific plant. Some people will even stagger the cuts on this very same plant. The only problem with that is that then you do have to go in there and sort of deadhead sporadically. So one of the plants that I always do this to is these upright sedums, which, like I said, are prone to flopping. And you can do this. It's so easy with sedums. It's such a good plant to demonstrate on. You can do it absolutely with your fingers because this just like breaks right off. And if you know anything about these sedums, you know that they are super easy to root. So if you need new plants, you can just take off a few leaves, and you can root this probably just by sticking in a pot with soil, or I have actually just stuck it in the ground because you're going to have so many clippings that if 50% of them make it, you've got a ton of plants. If 25% of them make it, you've got a ton of plants. So they're very easy to propagate this particular plant this way. So you can pinch them back. You can also go through and actually use your pruners and cut them back if you like, which works pretty good for some other plants. Or you can actually take just a big shears and just chop off the top third of this plant. That will be just fine for the plant. The plant won't care. It's not particularly attractive in the meantime while it's growing back. So that's why I do like to kind of go through and sort of clean them up and cut just above a leaf node. But basically the rule of thumb is 1/3 to 1/2 of the plant is what you want to take back. This plant's in a state of a lot of growth right now, so it will quickly put on more new growth, so it won't look sort of awkward like this for any amount of time, really. And so now we'll have slightly later blooms on this, which you may or may not want. And then a stockier, sturdier plant, and I'm going to do that to all of these. All right, let's go take a look at a couple other plants that I'm going to do this to this year. Now, the next plant that I like to give the Chelsea chop to are tall phlox, and these are ones that are very fun to stagger a little bit so that you get a ton of lengthy blooms. So I like to stagger, like I said, I like to stagger by plants. So I might cut this one down by 1/2. I might not cut this one back at all. And again, same deal. I do like to use a pruners with this. Sometimes these stems are a little thicker, so you can't really pinch them. And actually, the phlox are a great one to just take your shears to and just lop the top off of them, especially if you have a lot of them. And speaking of chopping, you knew it was coming, right? This video is sponsored by Skillshare. So Skillshare is this fabulous online learning community that has all sorts of wonderful videos by experts in a variety of different fields to just take off with your creativity. And some of the videos they have are about cooking. Like this video called Beef 101 by butcher Patrick Lafrida, who tells you all about the different cuts of meat and is really going to help you level up your grill game because you're going to know how to cook every single one of them this summer. So whether you're looking to fend off boredom or learn a new skill, Skillshare is a place to help you keep learning. And the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of a Skillshare premium membership. And after that, it's only about $10 a month. I'm just finishing up getting this guy. I mean, look, phlox are pretty tough plants, so they'd be just happy with a big chop back. You don't have to get fancy about it. I do try, like I said, I do try to get above a leaf node, but if you want to take your shears and get the whole thing, you just go for it. So here we've got 2 more plants that are prime candidates for this. And I think you can probably see what one of the common threads is for plants that work well with this treatment, which is that they have leaves growing all the way up the stems. It's not like a basil clump from which flowers shoot out of. So this is generally a good sign that a plant might respond well to this treatment. This first one is Veronicastrum, Queen of Diamonds. It gets quite tall, 4 feet, 5 feet maybe. Last year was the first year I had these in the ground, and they did start listing a little bit on me. So I actually think this is a great one. I don't mind the height. I actually quite like the height. But if we can keep it a little sturdier, I think that would be a great thing. I also really enjoy the flowers on this one. I left them up all year long after they were spent, and it was a really good look in the garden. This is a plant that not a lot of people grow. And I think it's worth having in your garden for a lot of reasons, but also because it's got this great upright habit to it. Next to that is penstemon. This one is Pocahontas. You might know things like Midnight Masquerade is another great one. I've never actually done this to a penstemon before, so I'm not going to do it to all of them. And one of the reasons why is I love the purple foliage on top, and you can see that the foliage towards the bottom is a little bit green. This purple foliage is worth growing all on its own. So I'm only going to do a few of these, and this is sort of going to be my test project this year to see if I like how this looks. And if I do, I will do more of them, or maybe all of them next year. But since I don't exactly know what to expect from this treatment out of this plant, I'm just gonna do a couple of them just to kind of see how it goes. And that's the nice thing about this technique, is that you can really play around with it and you get to make the decisions. It's a good way to sort of customize the plants in your garden, and it's all up to you to sort of decide how you want this to work and when you want them to bloom. I mean, that's kind of nice to have that choice as a gardener. All right, I have one more plant to show you. So the last plant I want to show you is this one. Now, Nepota is one of the plants that often shows up on lists of plants that might benefit from the Chelsea chop. I don't actually do that to what I consider to be the typical Nepota because I can get several reblooms out of them by letting them bloom, cutting them all the way back, watering them, let them rebloom. I can sometimes get 3 blooms, so I don't feel a need to do any of this, and I don't really grow varieties that flop too much, so I don't feel a need to do the Chelsea chop with those. But this is a different kind of Nepota. First time I'm growing it, well, I planted these last year. This is Nepota. I'm going to put the proper botanical name on the screen because I'm probably going to murder it. It's subsessilis, I believe. And it's got these big wide leaves, but it's got beautiful flowers on it. However, I did not realize these were going to get so big. So this is a case, and these are just starting to flower right now. This is a case where I am actually going to prune these down, in part, more than in part, entirely to kind of try to size control them a little bit. And these I'm going to take down to half. Had I known these were going to get quite so big, I probably wouldn't have planted them literally right next to the path. But like I said, this was the first time I've grown these, so always the best way to learn a plant is to just grow it and see what it does, because you will learn quickly. Okay, so that's the Chelsea chop, you guys. This is about the earliest I do it here, beginning of June. I sometimes have done it mid-June. It all depends on when you've got time, what your plants are looking like, what you feel like doing. But I sort of like this because it's an interesting way to sort of play around in your garden and experiment with your plants And you know, you get to make some decisions on behalf of your plants, which is fun. All right, so that's the Chelsea chop, you guys. Let me know if you do any of this in your garden, and I would encourage you to play around with this a little bit. You're not going to screw anything up. Play around with it and see if you like how it works. Just kind of keep track of when plants bloom and if you like the look of them or not, and then you'll know for the future whether you want to do that or not. It's also really handy if you want your garden looking really good at a particular time of the year. You can sort of plan that out, and that way if you've got a big event, a big party or something going on in your garden at a certain time of year, a little later, well, maybe you want to chop things back a little so you get more blooms then. All right, I hope you're having a great day in your garden, and we'll see you soon.